But we're going to move on to our next topic here on the podcast, and it's a topic we've mentioned before on a past podcast, and I feel like we're bringing it up again only because this team, Villanova, the Wildcats, number 1 in the country this week, still in the AP rankings. Spoiler alert, if you have not seen them yet, they're not number 1 in ours. I'm not going to tell you where they fall. You got to watch the video for that, but they're not number 1 in the MVP rankings this week. And Brandon, the question is as simple as night and day. Why is Villanova not getting any respect as a title contender? Number 1 team in the country, you're usually saying, oh, they're the one that's going to win it all. But not this year. People look at Villanova and go, no, they ain't going to win it.
I think it's because people know better. People just know better. We've seen Villanova, do this little dance. They go on this little run. They get at the top, and we all know what happens. Nothing. Because they don't go anywhere. And that's why I don't think, outside of probably Villanova Wildcats fans, for any of you out there, go ahead and tell me why I'm wrong. Please let me know why I'm wrong. I'm interested to hear, because you may have a perspective that I'm not looking at. But for me, Villanova, not to say that they're a pretender. They're not a pretender. Not in the Big East. You don't have to be that good to be good. But I think that they are not a team elite enough, and I don't think they've really had enough big wins. They lose to Oklahoma when Oklahoma was 7. They lose to Virginia when Virginia was 8. They beat Xavier when Xavier was 6. They blow them out. They beat Butler at Butler when Butler was 18, won by 5. They lose to Providence. Close one, but they lose. Then they beat Providence on the road. I just don't think that there's enough big wins there. I mean, in Providence right now, 7-6 in the conference, 19-7 overall. I mean, they're ranked 23rd in the AP poll. To me, Villanova, really, in my recent history of, let's say, 4 to 5 years, has not really done anything significant. Has not done anything significant for anyone to look at them and go, Villanova's at number 1?
Mm-hmm.
Man, they're going to hold this number 1 spot, and they are going to keep going, and they're going to be really good, and they're probably going to win the tournament. I don't think there's too many people who have those words come out of their mouth.
Guess what happened to Villanova the last time they were a number 1 seed? And I'll give you a hint. It didn't happen that long ago.
Please.
Last year, they were a number 1 team. Only lost 3 games. So they can win their conference tournament, have the same amount of losses that they did last year. They beat Lafayette in the first round. Great. You beat a 16 seed. Then they play 8-seeded North Carolina State, and they lose 71-68. Boom, they're bounced out in the second round. 2014, they come in as a 2 seed. Oh, might be a little different. Bounced in the second round by 7-seeded UConn. 2013, they come in as a 9 seed, lose to number 8 North Carolina. 2011, is it going to be a little different? The 9 seed again? Nope, they lost to 8-seeded George Mason. 2010, they come in as a 2 seed. They lose in the second round to then 10th seeded St. Mary's, the Gales. The last time they made it to the Final Four, 2009, when they had, I'm like, okay, who did they have at the time? They had a guy called Scotty Reynolds, another guard play that helped them get to the Final Four. Who did they lose to? Oh, just Psycho T, Ty Lawson, Danny Green, Ed Davis, Tyler Zeller, and the Tar Heels in the Final Four. The year before that, they lose to Kansas in the regional semifinal. That same Kansas team that went on to beat Derrick Rose and Coach Calipari in the national championship. So the last time they went anywhere in the tournament past the second round, 08-09. Last Final Four appearance was in 2009 when, they beat some pretty good teams, but they ended up losing to North Carolina. And it's been a while since 2009, Brandon.
It's been quite some time. And see, that's what I'm talking about, though. In my comments in the beginning, that's what I'm talking about. Villanova, their
recent history is get bounced early.
They, for the most part, end up having a pretty solid season. But is that really what matters in the end? It's what do you do when you get to the tournament? Because you could be, 30-0 at the end of the regular season. But if you get into the tournament and you're bounced right away, what does it matter? What does it matter? So I think that is really big for Villanova. But they could put a lot of their critics to rest if they finish out the rest of the regular season strong, and if they go far in the conference tournament, and if they can make some noise come March.
I don't even know. Like, the conference tournament, maybe, because then you could get another shot at Providence being a ranked team. You can get another shot at Xavier. The only game right now that they have that's guaranteed that means anything to me is at Xavier, because that's a ranked opponent. But when you're number one, it's all these games, you're sitting there going, we can't lose because it's a bigger upset to lose than if we won. Because being number one, you're supposed to win every game. It's you see 1 versus 8. Well, if 8 loses to 1, okay, that was supposed to happen. So you just stay where you are. The thing with me, there's two things why I'm not high on Villanova. Number one, we said it, recent history. The last 5 tournament appearances for the Wildcats. They have lost in the first round twice and the second round 3 times. They have never made it past the first weekend of March Madness. No Sweet 16s, no Elite 8s. God forbid we talk about Final Four or a national title. The second thing, and this goes especially for this year in college basketball, that hurts Villanova, is the parity. A team that comes in and you're getting bounced out earlier and earlier each and every year, you see a year like this with all the parity that we've seen. There was a question that I saw on ESPN where they asked, could this be the year a 16 finally beats a 1? And of course, Joe Lunardi was like, well, you know what? I'm not going to give an answer because you've actually got to see the matchups to say whether or not a 16 will beat a 1. But God forbid a team walks in like, let's say, leader of the Who Cares division, like Chattanooga. They're supposed to win their conference. Well, they don't win their conference tournament, so another team steals it away from them.
Those Chattanooga fans are not going to be happy that you called their division the Who Cares division.
Well, I mean, let's be honest.
Let's be honest. I couldn't even name their division, so the Who Cares division is going to have to count right now.
We're not looking at Chattanooga as being a dominant team in the tournament, but for Villanova, you want those surprises in the conference tournament. You want that team to surprise, and Chattanooga still gets a spot, and they take the other team takes a spot away from, let's say, a Florida State. But if Chattanooga sticks to form, and I'm using them as the example, if a team like them sticks to form, wins their conference, and you get like a 16-seeded Chattanooga going up against Villanova, that's where Villanova will have a problem. It's going to be how strong are the 16 seeds. And this year, Brandon, they could be pretty strong.
Joe Lunardi's bracketology right now, number 1 seeds. He's got Villanova as a number 1 in the East, Oklahoma the West, North Carolina in the South, and the Jayhawks from Kansas. the Midwest Division. Ricky, out of those four, I know Villanova fans are just going to pile on the negative comments here, but Villanova, I think, the weakest number one out of all of them, with, I think, the strongest one, even though they haven't gotten them yet, is Oklahoma. Oklahoma has been unable to beat Kansas, but yet I think Oklahoma is the strongest one.
The reason why Villanova is maybe not the weakest, I would say ranking these four number fours, I would go...
Four number ones.
Number one would be Oklahoma. Number two would be North Carolina. And then number three and number four is where I'd say, okay, now let's have the debate of either Kansas or Villanova, because there could be justifications made for having either Villanova 3 or 4, because there have been times where Kansas hasn't looked that great unless they're playing Oklahoma.
Now listen here.
Unless they're playing Kentucky.
Now listen here. This is coming from someone who's a North Carolina fan. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about this year, not based on their history of what they usually are.
You're talking about how Villanova, we said what they have been.
So we're talking about Oklahoma number 1, I think Kansas at number 2, North Carolina number 3, and Villanova number 4. We've seen North Carolina really falter this year. I've seen them falter. They lose against Notre Dame on the road, but they lose on the road at Notre Dame. Earlier in the week, they had lost against Louisville. That was not a good week for North Carolina. They lost on the road at Texas early in the season. They have lost some games that people will look at and go, North Carolina should not have lost these games. And they probably shouldn't have.
This is that year of parity we've been talking about.
The other team, Texas and then Notre Dame, both played a great game. But North Carolina has not looked all that strong at multiple times this season. And you mentioned it. It is the parity. Mm-hmm. We've seen it from so many teams, 1 through 25, but then even those teams who aren't 1 through 25 have probably been in the top 25 at some point this year, are darn close to being there. And that is scary for the teams towards the top when you look into March.
And I'm going to circle the wagons back to Villanova, because that's the meat of this discussion has been. And you brought up the bracketology. They are a number 1 seed as of right now. Looking at their region, I wouldn't be happy if I'm Villanova, because right now, Bucknell or Wagner, if either one of those two are playing Villanova in the first round, I'm sitting there going, okay, fine. Villanova's going to get past them. They'll do it. It's fine. But then the next game, okay, either Michigan or Connecticut. They can do it, but that's going to be a tough game. Then if they get to the Sweet 16, there's a possibility of playing Texas or Kentucky. I don't want to play either of those two teams if I'm Villanova, especially Kentucky. I mean, Texas, you might be able to beat them, but Texas is going to be a dark horse. They're a dark horse for me. They were a dark horse at the beginning of the year when I surprisingly picked them to go to the Final Four. Then, God forbid, you get to the Elite Eight. Oh, then you get Utah, West Virginia, Providence, Maryland. I don't like except for maybe Providence, I don't like my odds against those teams either. Then the Final Four, you get the other number 1 seeds in there. But if they have a region anywhere near what Joe Lunardi has them in right now, we could see Villanova, oh, cool, we got to the Sweet 16 for the first time in forever. Sweet. Oh, Kentucky bonks you on the head with a rubber mallet and you fall back down. We could see that happen.
It's very possible. It's
very
possible.
Cartoony, where the Wildcat comes in, hits you with the rubber mallet, and birds flying over your head, and you fall off the mountain.
Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibilities, that's for sure. I think that we're just gonna have to. I'm gonna give the stereotypical answer. I guess we're just gonna have to wait and see. So let's watch.